Well, we were really looking for something different anyway. Matthew's one of those kids, he doesn't fit into the standard box.
Mm-hmm.
He's a rule follower, and when he'd come home from school, from traditional learning, he was exhausted.
School is in. But are you really ready to learn? Open your eyes to a new day in education with the Awakening Educator, a program specifically designed to explore a new, mindful way of educating our youth. Learn about social-emotional learning, new modalities of teaching, and the most relevant topics in education with your hosts, Susan Andrian and Megan Sweet. Susan and Megan will take you inside the issues by looking at them from different points of view, from policies and research to teaching models that are actually used in schools. There's never a dull moment in this classroom. Have any questions you'd like to ask? Maybe you have knowledge you'd like to share, and share your thoughts live on air. Grab a pen and paper and get ready to open your textbooks and minds to a new way of learning on the Awakening Educator.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Awakening Educator. I am Megan Sweet.
And I'm Susan Andrian.
Who's clearly multitasking and doing something else. And we're really excited to have you with us today. We've been in a kind of a two-part conversation with Bloomington Online Schools, which is a school that emerged out of the pandemic. And, at first to kind of meet a need, but then the school district made a pivot and decided to create an online school that would be everlasting. And so we're going to today speak with, again, a couple of the folks we met last week who helped to create the school, and as well a teacher and a parent and a child who go to that school, so we can get their perspective of what the school is like for them, what they get out of it, and any questions that they have about it. So let's welcome our guests. Lana, do you want to say hi first and remind everybody who you are and what your role is?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Lana Peterson. I'm the Director of Community Engagement for the Learning and Technologies Collaborative at the University of Minnesota. I'm a research practice partner with Bloomington Schools, and which means that I bring in relevant research. I help collect data so we could do rapid cycles of feedback, and help with professional development and constantly improving.
Wonderful. Welcome, Lana. Maybe Holly?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Holly Skadsum. I am the elementary online coordinator for the program. So been with the program since, we dreamt it up in a Google Meet and have been working on it ever since.
And Allie.
Hi, I'm Allie Kalkman, and I am a kindergarten teacher in Bloomington Online School. And I was part of the summer team that helped develop the school as well.
I'm Allison Dennison, and I'm here with my son, Matthew, and I'm a parent, and he is a student.
Welcome to all of you. It's such a, Susan and I have been really excited to talk with all of you about what you created, and maybe what we can start with is our takeaways from last week. So Susan, I'm going to put you on the spot with your takeaway, but I'll name mine first, and then that gives you a minute to think about it. But what I really took away from last week was a deep appreciation of the intentionality around how the online school was created, and not just to kind of with what a lot of schools are doing, kind of find an online kind of learning management system and plug the kids into that system, but instead to really seize this opportunity to create an intentional school that has social justice woven inside of it. And I always lose the phrase, computer skills, what's that called? Technology, deepening students' connection with technology, not only just through an online platform, but also through intentional learning opportunities for the kids. So that intentionality was really clear throughout. And for me, that's really exciting. And as somebody who creates change and creates school settings, I was geeking out a lot last week on that. So thank you for that contribution. Susan, what did you take away from last week?
I will build on the intentionality. I think I agree. It was really clear how much thoughtful work and the partnership with the University of Minnesota. It was really exciting to see the innovation. And so that's the piece that really I took away, this reimagining of what education is. And I think when we look at moments of crisis and moments of turmoil, I think, the tumultuous time that this was, and the sort of reorganizing and reimagining, and that there were a group of folks who were like, okay, how do we really, what's happening here, and how do we build on it? And the innovation and the excitement, and you could see that who you attracted to come join you in this venture were those who were really interested in reimagining and passionate about it. And when people are excited and they're passionate, and you can build something amazing. And so, not to say that it's easy, and not to say that it's perfect, because I'm sure it's not, but just that you were able to see and meet the needs of families in a way that really was missing. And we're excited to hear more about what it looks like on the day-to-day, and to talk with Allie and Allison and really hear, and Matthew, and hear what this experience is like for you as you live it, and we always say here in Oakland, like, you're flying the plane and building it at the same time. And I know you're all doing that. And so we're excited to hear more about what that's like when you're day to day. And we can't say in the building anymore. So you got to say something, you got to find a new way of saying in the computer, in the ether.
Yeah, that's great, Susan. Thanks for that. And maybe we can start with you, Allie. I mean, I think it was one of the things that I noticed a lot, and I wondered a lot about teachers moving from being in person to online. I think that was a big leap for a lot of educators. And one of the big things that I heard was genuine concerns about being able to effectively provide instruction to kids. But more than that, the ability to connect with kids and develop that culture that's going to be safe and nurturing and supportive for kids, but in an online environment. So I'm kind of curious what drew you to the role, maybe as a starting point, but then also, and you have kindergartners, which is like, that's like, I don't know if I could like throw rose petals at you or something around like just how amazing it is that you're doing that. I would do that. But also, like, how do you do it with young ones who have never actually been in school at all before?
Yes, of course. So obviously we were all distance learning last spring, and that was kind of our first deep dive into what is online learning. I'm very lucky. I've been using Seesaw for years in my classroom, and that's a platform that we launch a lot through. So that was really helpful for me getting up and running. But then in the late spring, Holly approached us and said, like, what are our thoughts about a school for next year? Like, how does this look for kids? And I will say I was one of the first ones that was like, I'm not sold yet. Like, play is so important in kindergarten. Like, we are huge proponents of responsive classroom techniques and building relationships with kids and making sure that kids have everything developmentally appropriate. But I did join the summer team to help work on curriculum and standards. And through that process, I just started to see the possibilities of how we could reimagine what we do in the classroom and bring it online. I know we were the first ones asking for, like, how are we getting manipulatives in their hands? What are they going to be counting with? What are they going to be playing? Like, we made sure that we took all of those parts that were so important about an in-person setting and kind of set those as our foundation to then build everything else around. So like you said, there's a lot of intentionality, and a lot of our values in education went into how we structured the program, which I think was really important. In terms of creating a classroom community, we know that littles routine is like the most important thing you can do. So starting from the beginning of the year, we were using our morning meetings, our closing circles, giving them time to connect with peers. I think Seesaw has been a unique platform for us this year in that we've been able to see more of kids' home lives than ever before. And I think peer-to-peer connections have been almost bigger that way. They don't know each other just as classmates, they know each other as people, but also as a teacher, I know them as a person, not just as a student, on a deeper level than ever before. They can show me what they were working on at lunch. They can show me their favorite food that they built with, or that they made with their family over lunchtime. Like, there's just so much more access to their own personal culture and their daily life that I think has almost made building community easier in a way.
So there's a couple things that are so interesting about that. One, that building community, this depth of community is fascinating, and I want to hear more about that. But I love that you were a reluctant participant or a pessimist at first? Because I think sometimes those of us in education that start out with this pessimism, but are open to, but really want to show up with the critical eye of what does this mean? And how are we going to do this? And how are we going to meet these standards? And how are we going to get manipulatives in kids' hands? Like the real critical element that's needed to do the deep dive, to be able to make those thoughtful moves that transition those things that we did and relied on in person to this more, to the more working with families to be able to bring those manipulatives in and to work as partners. So it's kind of exciting. I'm curious, what was the process, like the transition from when you were reluctant to like, how did that transition happen for you? And when was it like, oh, not only do I like this, I'm staying on board and doing it moving forward?
I am for sure like a futuristic questions person. Like poor Holly gets lists of questions for me, like how on earth is this and this and this going to work even to this day? And so I think for me, I just started with so many questions and so many things that I wasn't ready to give up about the classroom. And so I, as those questions came up, I felt the need to sort of problem solve them for whoever would be in that role. And so that natural, like, okay, well, we've solved the materials thing and we've solved this, and now I see how you're going to do this, just kind of made it a clearer path for me too. And I think the amount of teacher input that has been able to go into this experience has been huge as well. Being able to create a curriculum around a social justice theme, being able to give kids more opportunities in our themes to appreciate their world, understand their world, share their lived experiences it was something that I was like, I cannot let this go. Like I want to be a part of that experience, because I think if you talk to any of us, whether we are continuing on or not next year, this experience will change how we go back into the classroom 100%. I think it's given all of us just this big mindset shift over our priorities, over how things work, over, what we spend our time on, over how we teach a standard. So I just think it's been that extra challenge for us as teachers too, which has been really fun.
I appreciate you naming that, Allie, and I'm anxious to get to Matthew and Allison, but I wanted to ask you, Holly and Lana, how did you do that? Because I think that's actually one of the places where we often can shortchange a redesign process, because it can get kind of like a lot to respond to a lot of different questions that are coming in. How do you funnel that? But also it can feel really difficult if you're not confident in facilitating something where there's some openness. So I would just love to hear how you created the space for teachers to bring their ideas forward. And for someone like Allie, still at this point, to name that that's such a valuable resource for her and supported her to get on board, is how did you approach bringing educators in and helping them to think through this shift?
So for me, that was like key. Like, if we're going to reimagine, let's find the best of the best people that are ready to do that work, and let's reimagine it together. I think in our current system, we say we're going to hire a teacher and pluck them into the system. And this was like completely opposite. It was, we're going to hire the best people, and together we're going to build a system. And our teachers, I mean, Lana's been in classrooms for the last 3 weeks, so she could speak to what she's seeing, but they are phenomenal. And what they can do when you get out of their way is insane, right? Our teachers are so used to being stuck in a box, especially in our district. Our elementary teachers, they're rule followers. They like tell us what to do when we want to do it. And we said, there's no rules. We said, we're all doing this for the first time. None of us have done this before. Like, it's going to be trial and error. So like Allie said, you take the best of what you know, and we're going to figure out how to bring it online, but you're leading the charge. Like, I don't know how to teach kindergarten online. Allie maybe didn't know how to do it at the beginning either, but now over time, they have just like iterated, and it's gotten to this place where like Lana just came out of Allie's classroom the other day, and we chatted right away, and she was like, oh my gosh, like, it's mind blowing what they are doing with kindergartners online. It's fascinating. And so I think a big piece of it is getting out of our educators' way to let them do what they are trained to do and what they're passionate about. John Weiser always talks about, he was on part 1 of the podcast, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If we can give our teachers autonomy, mastery, and purpose, they're going to achieve amazing things. And that's what I would owe this whole thing to, is just trusting in our teachers that they're going to navigate their way through this, and then giving them the space and time to reflect and to iterate.
That's beautiful. I mean, I think there's so much history of teacher proofing education, right? Through different instructional tools or strategies, or this kind of distrust. But I just love what you said there. It literally gave me shivers of like, we, empower educators and get out of their way, because we are highly trained individuals who know what we're doing. And when you give that space for that, it's really just like what can grow is so profound. But when you stifle that, then what you get is, a stifled educational experience for kids as well. So thanks for that.
I would also say to that end that they've created such a community among staff that that's been a really easy thing to do. I think that that's another really important layer, is just how much the staff trust each other to take each other's feedback and to know what's working and hasn't been. So like we had to create community in our classrooms, our staff has that community where we are learning so much from each other every day too.
That's great.
I just add that in top of, giving staff opportunities to give feedback, there was a large budget for people's time that first year. And it's a large budget, but when you think about how much schools pay for curriculum, it's really not that large. Mm-hmm. So rather than buying that off the shelf curriculum that wouldn't have been that engaging for students, they took that money and they paid teachers, professional teachers who know a lot, for their time and their input, and also didn't rush it. And I think that's so powerful. And then I also want to say, like, if you want to do this, you need a champion. And that was Holly. Holly was the champion. Every survey I have done of teachers, their highlight has been Holly's leadership. And so you need somebody who's enthusiastic, who believes in it. I mean, Holly was going to get this done no matter what. She's been a teacher. She's kind of in the middle of administration and teachers too. So it puts her in this like prime position to just gather that feedback. She's constantly grabbing input and then making changes. You need a champion if you're going to do a big initiative like this. And it's a little about what that champion knows, and it's more about the way that champion performs in their daily life. And this would not have been possible without Holly.
Well, that is a great note to transition to our first commercial break. It's hard to believe we're already there. And I'm really excited to hear from Allison and Matthew when we get back from our first break. I think we've set the ground, and now I really want to hear what it's like to be a family at the Bloomington Online School.
Hey listeners, are you enjoying this show? And do you want to hear more? Then please subscribe to our show on your favorite streaming platform. Like this show and tell others about us. We are available on CastBox, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, and Apple Podcasts. So please connect with us there. You also can watch shows live being recorded on our Facebook site, The Awakening Educator. You can connect with us via Instagram or Twitter at The Awakening Educator. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter. We've been busy recording a ton of terrific shows that will be rolling out over the rest of this year. So we would love to be able to have you be a regular member of our community. Thank you so much and have a great, great day. All right, we're back. Thanks, everyone. When we went on commercial break, Lana was talking about the power of having a champion who leads this kind of work, and not only just somebody who really believes in it, but also has the right positional authority and relationship. So I did my doctoral degree on like what makes effective change. So I'm going to geek out real quick and then I'll stop. But it's actually those connectors between the central office and the schools that are the most important, like make or break moments for any kind of an initiative. And those are often, there's communication, but it's really a person who is able to connect with folks that are out of school, but also connect with and advocate for them at the school level or at the district level. And it's not always an easy dance. So I want to take my hat off to you, Holly, because you have to kind of listen a lot on one end and kind of poke and prod on the other. And it can feel a little bit sometimes challenging, or like you're pulled between two different extremes. So I just want to thank you for that. Matthew, it would be wonderful to hear from you. So you've heard a little bit about how your school was created, but it'd be great to hear from you. What do you like about doing online school?
It's really nice and it's really quiet, and it gives me a chance to concentrate and get my work finished on time. So I'm not really behind on math. I'm not behind on reading. So back and in school, I couldn't concentrate that much because of all the kids making noise and talking so loud, so I couldn't concentrate and get my work done. But I managed to get my work done. But now in online, it's really helpful now that I can concentrate, get my work done.
It's really the focus time for him.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I'm curious, Mom, Allison, also known as Matthew's mom. What has this process like been for you as a parent supporting your child and making the decision to remain in an online school? And what were some of the kind of things that you had to think about and consider around why you made this choice as a family?
Well, we were really looking for something different anyway. Matthew's one of those kids, he doesn't fit into the standard box. Mm-hmm. He's a rule follower. And when he'd come home from school, from traditional learning, he was exhausted. It took a lot out of him to make it through the day, to deal with, he loves being with his peers, but dealing with behavior issues, dealing with the noise, especially, and just the workload. He always gives 100% to what he's doing. And, when you're dealing with all the distractions, that workload just tired him out. And that was really, I think besides the fact that the pandemic was going on, that was our primary driver. We had a lot of support. My husband and I both had, support from, we've got an older child as well. And he also did distance learning. But he, if I was in a meeting, his older brother would help him with something. His teacher was great about always being willing to help. If he didn't understand a math topic, she was always willing to bring him in on one of the small groups. And then he has two great grandparents who, were 100% on board. And he goes there twice a week, usually, sometimes 3 times a week. And, again, my dad will help if he's struggling in math, which, he was, before the school year started, 1 to 2 standard deviations behind in math. And both my parents were there to help and support. So that support system was huge.
I'm curious. I'm thinking about just sort of this opportunity to have a deeper relationship with the multi-generational family. A lot of that has been lost in the modern world and in modern education. As you were talking, I was just really thinking about the value of being able to have these deep intergenerational relationships with your grandparents, and how beautiful that is. And the other piece that really keeps resonating for me is and my background, I'm a mental health provider, a marriage and family therapist. And a lot of my work in the schools has been around trauma and sensory work and really supporting environments for kids. And I heard the noise thing come up a lot and how exhausting that is. And I know a lot of kids like Matthew, where the noise is just, it takes up so much psychic energy to be able to keep some of that stuff out and be able to focus. And I can hear in your experience as a family, that exhaustion. And when you're tired, you really can't enjoy the learning in the same kind of way. And it sounds like Matthew's having this experience of being really connected to his grandparents, which is lovely, and also being able to be more engaged with the material without feeling so tired and exhausted with some of the things that are coming in. But I'm curious, you said he's very social. So how have you then, so now he has this experience of being able to learn without distractions and without the noise. What are some of the ways that you've been able to maintain social relationships and give him a lot, or Matthew, actually, I'd like to hear from you. Like, how has it been for you? How do you maintain your friendships and your peers with your peers?
Well, so when we get an assignment, I go into breakout rooms with some of my classmates. And once we're done, and if it's like 13 minutes left on the clock, we would talk and I would join in on the conversation. So that's how I would talk with my peers. And it's really nice without all the distractions. You can't hear what they're saying with all the loud noise going on.
Yep. And at the beginning of the day too, you always log in early.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's been great. And we noticed that actually at the end of last year when everybody was forced to be home, his classroom, so many of the kids would join right away or early and just talk, and as kids do. And so that's been really great. He's got one friend here in the neighborhood, and then we've got some neighbor kids too, that he kind of runs around with sometimes. But yeah, not much right now, but
it's hard during a pandemic too. It's different. So
yeah, everything's outside. It's tough in the wintertime.
But it's more fun to be outside.
But yeah, it's more fun to be outside anyway. So yeah, from a social standpoint for him, I don't think there's been much of a difference in the school setting.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. And I think it's a real gift that you have so much support at home too, because I think that can be the challenge for a lot of families as they contemplate online learning. And I know it's been a real pain point for a lot of folks this year is how do you do it? How do you keep kids focused and also work at the same time? So it's great that there's that much support at home. Matthew, what's your favorite thing to do during the day? What's your favorite activity?
Reading, because that's the end of the day.
Reading, because it's the end of the day. Do you read with your class, or is that something you do on your own?
That's so I would have reading meetings when we have a class book. So now I'm reading the book Ghost, and I'm doing it with a different class and some classmates from my class. And I would read some minutes a day.
And I would say that was actually a really big benefit that I wasn't expecting. In fifth grade, they're kind of breaking out. They're two classrooms, and so they kind of float between two classes. So it kind of gets them ready for sixth grade in some regards, which is nice.
Yeah, the flexibility of being able to kind of switch between, it's so funny how much we keep kind of creating these boundaries that don't exist online around like, well, we have to stay with our own class, but it's like, that's not true. And it's been one of the exciting things to see and is actually how we can start to carry these kinds of engagements forward. I'm a school board member in the district where I'm a school board member. The two high schools are going to get together and start creating some shared online classes that, has a lot of great benefits for the kids. And it means that there's actually cost savings, but also more opportunities for them to create diverse opportunities for kids because the boundaries of the schools don't exist the same way. Even if kids are in person, they can also do online, like you can do both. So I think those things are really cool. Allie, I would love to hear how you keep, how do you get the littles like this engaging because I like I said, I taught middle school, so I'm used to kind of a little bit more of a sullen kind of like low energy vibe. But I was an administrator in elementary school, and the kindergartners frankly scared me to death because they are fast, especially at the beginning of the year. And there's just so many norms you need to support kids on. And then online, it's so different. I know that kids want to share all their, so you were talking about like sharing like their food and things like that. But I also know they want to bring in their stuffed animal and they want to talk a lot. And, so how do you do that?
I would say that we just keep things as active as possible. In every lesson, we are making sure that they are talking, that they are moving, that they are doing something with their hands. And if they have done all three of those things, usually they're pretty content. We're good. So I think it's just being mindful about how long have I been asking them to sit? When is the last time they got to talk to a peer? Or we even do things like I have a stuffed animal dog in the background. Like we talk to stuffed animals. We bring them in as a learning tool. And then it feels less like a toy. It's something that encourages learning. So, we'll whisper answers to our stuffed animal really quickly and then set it back down. And then we'll write something on our whiteboard. So I think it's just that balance of not doing one thing for too long, which is kindergarten teaching in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm. That doesn't sound much different than what you would hear a kindergarten teacher say in general. I'd love to hear, what is a project or an activity or something that you are able to do in an online that you were not able to do? What's something new that you've brought into your teaching or practice that is something that is very different than what you would have done when you were in the classroom?
One thing that we did this winter that we're trying to reimagine how to do in the classroom is a cultural suitcase. So we've been talking about culture and what that means. And so throughout an entire week, we would read a book that would talk about an aspect of culture. And then they would be able to find that in their house, take a picture, take a video, and share it out. And I just think that's so different than tell me the name of your favorite song. And they might hum a few bars. They're able to go find it on YouTube and record it. And we can play little bits of their favorite songs. Or tonight you need to take a picture of a meal that you ate. And it's not did I remember to do it? Did I remind mom to do it? It's my tablet's right there. So I can snap the picture and it's there. So I just think that we were just able to learn so much more about our classmates, and kids were able to learn more about themselves. They're oh, I like that, but I like that too. Or that's a cool idea. I want to try that at home. So I just think that there's been a little bit of that boundary breakdown too.
We have about another minute before our next break.
You were doing so good with the time today, Susan. I just want to give you all props for time because I keep spacing it out.
It's neither one of our strengths, but we're working on it because we get so engrossed and the conversation is so engaging. So I think this is a good breaking point. And when we come back, I'd actually really like to hear about the schedule that kids experience both in the little grades and and then Matthew at your grade, what does the schedule actually look like? And then as this transitions into next year, maybe to hear about what the school is going to look like and what kind of moving pieces you have in play.
Are you ready to change the way we do school? Yeah, me too. This is Megan Sweet from the Awakening Educator, and I've designed programming that empowers educators to reimagine how they approach their work. The pandemic has laid bare what most of us already knew. Our schools are under-resourced. Our system is set up to fail our most vulnerable students. Our educators are burned out and overwhelmed, and we all deserve better. With almost 30 years in education and 15 dedicated to leading school reform, I have been there and I get it. I've sat in the same seats that many of you have. I've been a classroom teacher and a school administrator. I've led district, county, and statewide reforms. I've coached dozens of teachers, principals, and executive leaders, and I've partnered with students, parents, and community activists. I have the scars from a lifetime of scrapping out in education, but also the lived experience that change is possible. After facing the prospect of quitting education myself, I began a journey to understand how I could stay in the profession I love, but do it in a way that was sustainable. Here's what I now know. It begins with self-care. Prioritizing ourselves can feel counterintuitive for educators, But when we give without attending to our own needs, eventually we run out of resources and burnout ensues. But when we stop fighting the system and instead look inward for the answers we seek, we live more empowered lives and are better able to create the educational settings where our students will thrive. Here's what I also know. We already have the answers inside of us. We just sometimes need help getting them out. And that's where I come in. I love supporting educators to find their inner voice and match all those school smarts with their innate instincts about what works best for students. My superpowers are listening well, synthesizing ideas, and breaking complex processes into understandable and accessible parts. How will we do it? It all starts with doing what I call self-work, dedicating time and attention to building a relationship with ourselves. We do this in a course I call the Beliefs Lab. By the end of this course, you'll understand why self-care is essential for being an effective educator, and you'll have strategies you can use right now. You will also get a handle on some of those beliefs that are helping you and those that are getting in the way. The next step is doing the schoolwork, leading classroom and school change. In the course I call The Cycle, you will learn a process for realizing goals for yourself and for your educational context simultaneously. You will also have deeper insights and strategies for putting your plans into action. Want more support as you engage in this self-work and schoolwork? I've got you covered. My personalized coaching and consulting services are designed to meet you in your school right where you are and support you to clarify your vision for the future. Want to know even more about what I do? My book is a great place to start. An Educator's Guide for Using Your 3 Eyes details the self-work and schoolwork that I described above and talks about concrete ways that you can start to feel better right now. If you want to learn more about how to work with me in the courses I just described, please come to my website, www.your3eyes.com. That's YOUR3EYES.com. I can't wait to support you to realize a better future for yourself and for your school community.
Welcome back. We are so excited to be talking with the Bloomington Online School. When we were headed out, the last question we decided to talk about when we come back was really about what is it like on day to day? What are the schedules like? What's the experience like for kids? What's the experience like for teachers and administrators? What does it feel like to live in an online school day to day? And so maybe Matthew, if you're okay, we'd like to start with you. What is your schedule like? Run us through your day.
So first at 9 o'clock, it's morning meeting. Then it goes to 9:20 or 9:25 or 9:30. And then, so some classmates have math groups with Mrs. Gunko. And she helps them with math and if they're stuck on anything and if they're falling behind. But mastery checks is where you go to check out that unit, or let's say checked out of 5.2, and I'm going to go take the mastery check for that. And
so you're kind of working, Matthew, if I can ask you a question, everybody's working it sounds like kids are working at their own pace. Oh, and so depending on where you are in your math work, you might be working one place where your classmate might be working on another part of that math work. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Which has been great when he's struggling with fractions or something like that. You know, he can take a little bit more time and go. So keep going.
Yeah. And then after mastery checks, no, that's optional. Nobody has to really attend it. But and then after that, it goes on to specials, which is music, art, gym,
on a rotating schedule.
Yeah. And then it goes into math groups, or sometimes we will have reading assessments at that time. So we would skip the math groups. But after we're done with that reading assessment, then we go right back to our normal math group schedule. Then after that, goes on to lunch. And then at 12:45, it's an afternoon brain break, which just tells us what's the schedule like for the afternoon. And then we got an seesaw activity. And then some of us have reading groups with Mrs. Gunkel, which are lit circles, and they talk about our book and what page we were supposed to read and make an inference about that. And then that goes on till 2:30, which is a closing circle. And that's pretty much my day, my schedule.
And they've got active breaks throughout the day. So that's nice as well.
And those are full days, 5 days a week then? Is that what that is?
Yep. Full days. Except for Wednesdays, though. Those are pretty short.
Yeah, the short Wednesdays, so teachers can get together and talk. Thanks for that, Matthew. I appreciate that. Maybe Holly or Allie or Lana, you can share how you started to kind of form the day, because that's actually another big part of the debate is how do you create the day? Mm-hmm. What are those, we all have new language now. What are the synchronous times versus asynchronous times? And how do you create an opportunity? I mean, I could hear in Matthew's voice, just like a lot of confidence in his schedule, but also a lot of joy in it too. You could hear, he's like, and then I do this. And so that diversity of his experience is very evident in what I'm hearing, but I'm just wondering how you went about creating that.
Yeah, I just want to note Matthew seems to have a lot more confidence and know his schedule more than I think if he was in school, it might be a little bit harder because there's a little bit more responsibility and ownership on his end. So yeah.
I will actually pass it to Lana because we were really lucky. This was part of that research partnership, is that Lana and her team did a ton of research for us this summer that then led into us developing the schedule. So I'll pass it to you, Lana.
I think it sounds too like it's been iterative. We wanted a balance between live time. And again, it's like we were learning from what was happening in distance learning, but also remembering that these students opted in for online learning. Their families were opting in. So you can assume there can be a bit more synchronous time than from before. And I'm also seeing a lot of choice. So for instance, I was in a classroom this morning and the teacher asked, how do you want to do this next activity? Do you want to go into breakout rooms? Do you want to do it independently? And they still keep the meeting open. So I think as time has gone on, it's been a bit more flexible too, and giving students choice and what they want to do next or how they want to experience the next activity as well. We really tried to ensure that there was a lot of that small group time and thinking that really maximizing the time that you get to work with small groups and that you're uninterrupted as a teacher, whereas in the classroom, you still have people coming at you all the time, even when you're working in that small group too. And so really focusing on the differentiation as well, but always starting with that grounding morning meeting. It's all about socialization, trying to provide as many opportunities for them to be social and kind of that responsive classroom model as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That was actually where my question was going to go, which is maybe Allie, you can talk to it, and then maybe Matthew can talk about his experience of it. But how do you create that culture and that safety? Because I'm hearing there's more independence for kids to do work, and also kids are working in groups together, often not monitored by an adult. And I already heard from Matthew an example of the kids actually do what they're supposed to do when they have free time, then they know how to use that. But that's not so simple to set up in the first place. So I'm just wondering how you set that classroom culture and then how you help to develop some of that independent learning.
Well, specifically in the primary grades, we started the year with very short meetings. So even though we are at a full schedule now, we were 20 minutes on and then we said goodbye till the next hour. And we maximized that time in between to work with small groups of kids and familiarize themselves with peers and model what a breakout room looks like with 2 kids at a time. So we were able to really maximize our off meeting times to teach those independent skills that kids would need going forward. So that was a big part of it, was just having that connection time, being able to be live, being able to practice, so that when we did things as a whole class, they already knew the expectations. They practiced it in smaller groups. They know what the teacher role is. So I think having that distraction-free modeling was actually really helpful. And we were also just really mindful of how we built everything at the start of the year. We had a schedule on how we introduced every single tool, which is common in responsive classroom with like guided discovery for materials. But we did that with every single tool in Seesaw. Every type of activity we would do had a really slow growing pattern that honestly took us till about mid-October to complete. But by the time we were there, we had very independent learners, which is something that I think surprised a lot of parents. Was you told them to do this and they can do it and they don't need my help to do that part of it. They might have questions on how to read a specific word or something, but in general, they were confident in their knowledge of things because of how slow we went, that nobody felt like, ooh, I don't quite remember those directions anymore.
It's so important, and it's so often hard to get the buy-in for that, carving out that much time for setting the norms and setting the expectations and teaching the behaviors. I really love the idea of modeling what happens in a breakout room. I watch my teenagers who have been on distance learning all year, and they go into a breakout room, all the cameras off, and nobody's talking. I'm like, what is happening in the culture that it cultivating that culture of a learning environment, and that the breakout room is a learning environment and that kids have ownership. And I can hear that. And I started to wonder, what about a kindergarten? Are you putting kids in breakout rooms without adult support in kindergarten? And it sounds like you are, which is just kind of amazing, right? That you would think that these littles can be in a room and engaging in their own learning and independence. And it's kind of exciting to hear that.
It was a little daunting at first. And I think the breakout rooms were even released like partway through September or late September. So we were like, ooh, do we even touch this right now? But we did use it for, at first my camera was on and I was participating with them as a group member. And then I was still in their breakout room, but my camera was off, so they couldn't see me, or, and so just really slowly backing away. And we would do the same thing with small groups. I think one of the things that was important in the classroom, we spend 30 minutes a day playing, but I'm able to go around and help kids develop their play, develop taking turns, all of those essential skills too. And so I think we treated breakout rooms and some of those other things much like we would play development in the classroom.
Yeah, that can't be underscored. I mean, I feel like as a teacher, I was actually just saying this to someone the other day, like I spent easily the first month of school. I mean, you're teaching, but you're setting those norms and expectations. You're helping kids understand and familiarize themselves with the tools in the classroom. And when teaching middle school, I had to do scheduling and calendaring and accountability stuff basically every single week, because they needed those constant reminders every single week, as most kids do. But again, I just want to underscore the intentionality of what you've all created, that it's a research based and you did your homework, which I think a lot of folks just didn't feel like they had the time for or the energy for. So it's huge that you all,
and you paid teachers to do that work, which I think is the other piece of investing the time financially.
Yeah. And then really slowly rolling out those skills, identifying what those skills are and slowly rolling them out through modeling. And I love even that example, Allie, of first I was in the room, first we had a small number and I let them know what it was. And then we actually let them go into the rooms, but I was there and I was a participant, and then I was there, but I wasn't visible. And that's a huge shift. Because if you're in the room and quiet, they're still going to orient to you. But if you're in the room and your camera is off, then it's much harder for them to want to make that connection, and then just observing and then being able to step away. And just what incredibly independent learners you all are creating. That's really, really just, I'm consistently blown away by what all of you are doing. And I'll put my little, it would be a great gift to the field if you all put out there, even how do you start the first 6 weeks of online learning? That people would gobble up, because I think that's where, if it goes wrong, bad patterns are established, and kids are uncomfortable. They're not showing up. And also the teachers or the other adults that are supporting the online environment, they're also frustrated. And then we just it gets really hard to move past that moment. So that intentionality is really helpful. Matthew, I'm wondering if you can name for us one of the norms or the rules that are true for small groups. So how did you learn how to work in small groups?
So a lot of times kids in my class would have their camera off, and that's every day. But sometimes in small groups, they would have to have the camera on and show off their work. But sometimes they won't have the camera on. So that's one of the rules that I follow in my small groups. And I never turn off my camera.
Yeah, I'd say that the whole independence, last spring, he would sit next to me and I was working from home. I'm in e-commerce, and so I'm used to being online and I'm used to working all day on a computer. He wasn't, and he would be right next to me asking me questions, for every single slide. And now I only see him when he comes out for a snack or when he's on active play break or something like that. He does all of his work independently now, which is huge. And I've got to give a lot of props to Holly and the rest of the team for really creating this structure. The same is true. He may come out and ask a question. He may need, he asked me how to spell a word this morning. Something as simple as that doesn't take a lot of time out of my day. But I think it sort of translates into adulthood if they can maintain those skills. Because as a manager, you're looking for people who can work independently, who will go off into a small group and actually get a task done. Mm-hmm. So I see a lot of positive future for this program if that can happen.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about, as you mentioned, the future, because I think the world is starting to open back up again. At least here in California, we're the tiers we're in a safer tier. Restaurants are open, things are opening. For the future of Bloomington Online School, what are some of the ways, once the world opens back up again and you still have this online school, is there any vision around having more opportunities to come together as a school or engaging in person in addition to the kind of the primary instruction of being online?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things we heard loud and clear through our surveys with families and through just reaching out was more time to connect, right? That's just, we're all craving that connection. And so I think something we're really excited about is the variable of COVID being gone, because then what does that mean? What else can we do? How it just opens up a whole nother world. Like Megan was saying, kids can take online and they can go face to face. And that's not our future vision for Bloomington Online School. It is going to be a fully online school. But what does a grade 1 mixer look like? It could be virtual, or it could be at a park or a central location. What does a family night look like? It could be virtual, or it could be, again, at a central location. So I think it'll just be another layer of questioning we ask ourselves is, how could we do it differently, right? And that's a question we've gotten really used to asking ourselves. How can we do it differently? And so I just think it opens up another level of opportunity when COVID's no longer a variable. So I don't know that we have anything specific planned yet, but we're going to keep looking at our data, keep asking our families what's going well, what needs improvement, and kind of let them lead the way on what we might offer as additional face-to-face options.
Yeah, it's hard to believe we're already at time, but I just want to underscore that too of again, I think you all are modeling, every single one of you on this call and the folks from last week, that curiosity and adaptability that sometimes can get lost when we're doing work and we're doing hard work and when we have our own challenges that we're also meeting. So I just love hearing from you, Allison, as a parent, that you went from having a child who was kind of poking at you every couple of moments and the stress of that for you and your ability to do your job, which I know and experience as well, because I had a young one at home and working full time online. It can just be really challenging, to having a place where your child is so independent and how intentionally that was brought in. But then also like exploring like, well, okay, we're an online school, but does that mean we're online all the time? And what are some ways that we can engage that would also be in person? And that the place where you're asking those questions are to the people that you're serving, which are your students and families, and finding out what makes a lot of sense to them. So I just appreciate that ongoing curiosity and engagement backed by so much powerful knowledge and expertise. All of you, I wish we had folks like you in every school district across the country. I just think the experiences for kids would be so profound. And I'm so honored that we got to get a glimpse into what you're doing and being able to highlight these phenomenal practices and hear from a student. Susan, do you want to have the last words? I'm always a rambler, so I will stop talking.
Yeah, well, I'd like to back you up. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the word. I can't. I'm a little bit tongue-tied right now. I agree. It's really an exciting time in education, and it's exciting to talk with folks who have taken this moment and seized it as a real moving us forward into the future of education. And I really appreciate your answer, Holly, around what's next. It's like, oh, we've got our whole new set of questions that we're going to dig into, and we're really excited to look at the data and look at the questions, which to me is really where we need to be all the time. If we can be in a place in education where we're always like learning and growing and asking questions, and that the questioning, not only for our kids to become inquiry learners, us as adults creating these culture that we're asking questions. How do we do this better? How do we reimagine? How do we move into the future in a way that meets the social, emotional, academic, and sort of all of the other things going on? We didn't get a chance to talk about the social justice curriculum, Allie, and I was hoping to really hear about that. That is an issue that Megan and I feel is the most important around equity. We think about it, we talk about it, we really want to keep that in the forefront. I think it's so great that you're doing it with kindergartners, as that is the place to start. And I imagine that there's a lot of creative ways that you're doing that. And so we hope to share your story as you go on our webpage and keep folks up to date of what you guys are doing as Bloomington Online School evolves.
And maybe we can have Matthew have the last word, which is if you could give advice to other kids that are thinking about doing online school, Matthew, what would you tell them?
I would say, if you're stuck on something, ask somebody for help. But if you know that this is pretty easy, and you know the answer, but you still need help on it, then you would ask a teacher or a parent close by. But if you're struggling like me back in the classroom and it's hard to concentrate, I would switch to online, and it's more quiet. And ask somebody, like your teacher.
It's not a cakewalk.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're saying. It's not easy. It's not like you're just sitting around playing video games all day.
Exactly.
It's actually school.
It's actually school. Yeah.
Exactly.
You are working.
And I just want to note, Matthew, because I hear you saying you like it quiet, and the other folks, there's the other end of this, that this is good for kids that have difficulty sitting still and need to move a lot, that sometimes that this can be an option too. So just really recognizing that this works for you because of who you are, and asking that question. So as you were, I came to my mind. So just as you were thinking.
Yep, that's very true.
Yes,
very true.
Thank you all so much for joining us for these 2 sessions, and for all of your hard work. Just so honored.
If you can rate us, if you like what you hear, please follow, join, subscribe, do all the things. We're on wherever you listen to podcasts. We have a lot of really exciting guests coming up. We're super excited about this summer. We have some incredible guests lined up, and the conversations about education right now are just mind-blowing. So, and this was one of them, and thank you. Like us, follow us, subscribe, all that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Class is dismissed. Wasn't that fun? Susan and Megan are always happy to greet you on the next episode of The Awakening Educator. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Education is the foundation for a brighter future. Open your eyes to The Awakening Educator